All right, we are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Coming to you not only on the Plus, but also on Facebook. If you want to comment or join in the conversation, as I said, now we're going to talk a bit about the debate tomorrow night at Belmont University. The eyes of the world will be on this, the second and final presidential debate before the big election. And if you have a question or comment, welcome to join us on this. We are joined now from, I believe, do we have him yet on the horn, Professor? Oh, well, we do have Ann. Good. I'll take her call in a moment. We'll be joined by a professor from Vanderbilt in just a moment who deals in debates and some of the interesting rules and how they all shake out. While we wait for him to hook up with us, let's go to Ann. Ann, good morning. Hi, Ann.
Good morning. I just had one quick comment.
Sure.
And that had to do with the two doctors that have been dealing with Donald Trump. And that is, Dr. Conley is not an MD. He is an OD. And Dr. Atlas is a neurologist. And neither one of those deal with infectious disease. And that is something that a lot of Americans are overlooking. And they might want to look up what an OD is, because he has never been through medical school, and that is what I am intrigued by. And a lot of Americans might want to take notice of why that is who is dictating a lot of what is being put out by Donald Trump. And I find that very intriguing. And that was just my comment for today.
All right.
Thanks.
Appreciate the call. Well, if there's good news on that front, of course, the president diagnosed with COVID-19, and as we saw, he had to go to Walter Reed for a period of time, but in a relatively short amount of time appeared to recover and is now back on the campaign trail and hopefully as well. And the question comes up on this, okay, we all know genetically we're all a little bit different, and maybe the president's makeup allowed him to fight this off, whereas someone else maybe not. As we know, his wife Melania is not on the campaign trail with him right now because she still has a lingering cough. The president, too, you do wonder, as any president of the United States would get, would probably be some of the best medical care available and even receive some of the experimental treatments, which to this point do appear to have worked. And you wonder, as an American, if you were to get sick, would you have access to the same types of things he did? And you would hope so if it works. But again, as we've seen with COVID time and again, I think we have different reactions in different people. And obviously, if you have any pre-existing condition, that creates a larger problem. But I hear what Ann says. Yeah, I guess in this day and age, you know, you have to be careful where you get your information from and try to look behind and see if whoever's providing the information has some other motive than besides just giving you the pure information, and what their qualifications are and where they're coming from. And that's what I try to do when I look for a consensus as best as I can. Okay, we're going to shift gears now, and joining us live now, Vanderbilt professor John Koch. Are you with us, sir? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning. Glad to be here.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. And listen, we thought it might be interesting to do a segment, certainly, and we've been reporting the big story here in Nashville and actually across the country tomorrow night will be this debate. And what's interesting to me, with your knowledge of debate and these types of things and how they play out, what do you think of the rules that they have in place now, and how this is going to work in terms of forensics and debate, with the first 2 minutes of the comment being with the mic of the other person off so they can't interrupt and they can be uninterrupted for 2 minutes. How do you think that plays out, and what do you think of that?
I am hopeful that it gives the candidates enough time to get their positions out, because the research shows that one thing that presidential debates do is that they increase information about issues and candidates to voters. And after the first debate, watching the focus groups, it seemed a lot of the undecided voters and voters in those focus groups were upset that they felt like they didn't get any new information, or they didn't come out of it knowing any more than they did coming in. And I think a lot of that had to do with the candidate interruptions. So I'm hopeful them having 2 minutes at the beginning to fully get out their positions will allow the voters to gain more information in this debate.
Yeah, I mean, just to be civil and allow each side to give their 2 minutes. Now, when the mics all of a sudden become open, what do you think will happen after those 2 minutes?
I think we might have a little bit of what the first debate looked like. Debate should have engagement. I think debate should have some engagement between the candidates. It should have some interaction between them. So I think the moderator should let it play out if it's being productive, and the moderator should step in if it's looking more like the first debate.
Yeah, and that's my question for you. In fairness to Chris Wallace, who took his share of criticism after that first debate, I would imagine neither he or anyone else really dreamed it would become what it became. And so I cut him some slack on that. I don't know how you handle it, but the moderator, where's the line, and how strongly can the moderator intervene and trying to appear as fair as possible? But in many of the cases, one side might be interrupting more than the other, and you got to step in.
Yeah, I think the moderator has to be the voice of the citizens in the debate, right? These debates aren't for the candidates necessarily, right? These debates are for the people to make a decision. Ultimately, right, what these debates should do is provide information that allows a citizen to either feel good about the decision they've already made or come to a decision. So I think the moderator, if these things are getting out of hand, needs to say, we're moving on. You're not providing any information that's relevant to somebody making a decision.
And try
right? Instead of, on one hand, they're journalists, but on the other hand, I think they got to adopt the voice of, a citizen who's watching this debate.
And when we say it's the art of a debate, I mean, this is not just open statements from each person. A debate. Define what a debate should be and what it is, and what kind of skills come into play if we're talking about a true debate.
Yeah. So what we call presidential debates aren't necessarily really debates. And this goes all the way back to the 1960s. So the 1960s with Kennedy and Nixon, they had a debate about debates, right? There was a large debate about what these, what we call presidential debates would look like. And there was talk about doing what we call academic debate, where there would be one topic and they would debate that one topic for an hour to 90 minutes. And then there'd be other things that they called joint press conferences, where both candidates would be there and they'd both field the same questions. And it was originally going to be a mix of those kinds of events. And what ended up happening is that all four events became these joint press conferences, and that became known what we know as presidential debates, where there's a moderator or moderators asking questions, and the candidates answer these questions back and forth, and they kind of function as a joint press conference. In a real debate, you would have a set topic or topics. You could do more than one, and there'd be back and forth using evidence and things like that. There'd be time limits, which we do have in these types of things. But mainly, I think what's lacking from what we call presidential debates and real debates is engagement between the candidates, right? Where they are, asking each other questions, where they're asking each other questions, where they're really, going in detail against each other's arguments.
Yeah, kind of like a cross-examination or something like that. Right. And I think if they tried to institute it and said to the candidates here in this case, cross-examine each other, it would be more just an attack, and I don't even know if questions would be asked.
Right. Well, one thing I've wondered, and I don't know, is if we had all those interruptions in the first debate. I wonder if they knew if they could ask questions, if there would be less interruptions, but it's hard to say how that would play out.
Yeah. We've got a question from Joe who's called back for you. Joe, go ahead. What's your question, Joe?
The only way a moderator could handle this debate would be to just turn it over to Donald Trump, because he's not going to follow the rules. He's going to interrupt as much as he can and disrupt and get off of the subject. So anybody that can't, this guy is off in left field, and he's done already said he don't want to talk about the pandemic. He wants to talk about foreign policy. Well, he don't know about foreign policy. That he's done screwed up the COVID. So that's the only way this debate will go, is to just turn it over and let him have it.
Which, of course, won't happen. But the two participants do have some say in their teams and handlers with what type of topics will be asked. Do they not? Or is this how is it typically set up with what they're going to cover in the debate?
Yeah, so usually both campaigns, along with the Commission on Presidential Debates, draft a memorandum of understanding. And that memorandum of understanding lists out what each debate could talk about: issues, time limits, things like that. This week, the Trump campaign said that this debate was supposed to be more foreign policy specific, and they don't think the questions are that foreign policy specific. So there's been some back and forth this week about the debate about the debate, but by and large, yeah, the campaigns negotiate these types of things.
Yeah, and as we know now, as we go to the break, sir, I think it's kind of like, the question can be asked, but what the candidate talks about, once that question's asked, they could completely ignore the question and just go off on a tangent. I mean, there's nothing to stop someone from doing that, right?
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, once the question's asked, they're going to have 2 minutes to answer it or not answer it, however they see fit.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, it's going to be a real interesting dynamic. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll kind of get into the issue of just how important this debate really is, one way or the other, and general debates are, and what might come out of this, and how you determine whether or not there's a winner or a loser. We'll be back with more in The Professor right after this.